In this video, I'm going to explain how to get better aim more quickly. While there's countless routines and aim training routines on YouTube, both from me and other people, this video will focus more on how to make those routines work for you and get better at the skill of improving than what to actually do while aim training. So you could be using a good solid KovaaKs routine or even Valorant Deathmatch. The advice in this video will help you. What you have to understand is that being able to quickly improve is as much of a skill as aim itself is. And I'm going to give you guys practical advice on how to get better at the skill and also why it's a skill and how it works. What we got to understand is that aim is just a motor skill. Good aim is just being good at this motor skill. Your brain just needs to be able to give the right motor signals to your arm, and your arm needs to be able to receive and act on them. In order to learn to perform a motor task, your brain has to physically change itself, and to get better at this task, it has to physically change itself. If you've ever heard of someone who isn't smart being called smooth-brained as an insult, that's because a brain that has a lot of information or skills or anything will have more wrinkles on it. The process of creating these wrinkles and making your brain not smooth is called neuroplasticity. It is the goal of aim training, physically changing your brain to become more capable of aiming, and you want to make the rates of neuroplasticity as fast as possible. So first we have to look at the idea of error rate. In order to improve, you have to make errors so that your brain has something to improve upon. If everything is absolutely perfect, there won't be anything to change and you won't improve. Maybe you'll improve a bit if you're young, but it won't be as efficient as if you made more errors. Now there's a lot of routines out there that call for high accuracy, perfect accuracy, aiming slowly, aiming smoothly, etc. I feel it's important to specify that these routines don't specifically conflict with high error rates. I'm not endorsing any of these routines by any means, but that's a topic for a future video. For example, look at Bardoz's Bard Pill. This is a static clicking technique that requires you to restart after a few misses, and it also calls for fast flicks. Your flicks in this routine are fast, and therefore you do not land them perfectly. So your errors come from the flicks, but a lot of times your micro adjustments are pretty slow and you very rarely mess them up, so you don't make a lot of errors in your adjustments. So it's also very important to stay focused. Basically, when you're aim training, neuroplasticity isn't actually happening. I'll explain when it happens in a minute. But in aim training, all that happens is that you focus on your errors, and then a molecule that's associated with focus called acetylcholine will actually physically mark the neurons that your brain deems to be responsible for your errors. So in our Bard Pill example, there's really two approaches to where your errors could come from. They could come from micro adjustments or wide flicks. If you look at Bardoz's instructions, you won't mess up your micro adjustments often. You'll mainly mess up your initial wide flicks. But if you want to get better at wider flicks, then you should focus mainly on those and their related errors. And if you were using this technique to improve at micro adjustments, you would focus on those and their related errors. If you're getting really good at focusing, then you could probably focus on both at the same time, though this would probably be pretty hard. Now at this point you're probably thinking you don't make a ton of errors with micro adjustments, the Bard Pill must be pretty bad for training them, and to a certain degree you are completely correct. But there's actually a catch. Neuroplasticity rates are boosted by norepinephrine and epinephrine being present in your brain when you're performing a task. So now if you're like most people, you're probably thinking, what does this mean? Well, epinephrine is just the word used for adrenaline when it's in the brain, and most people know what adrenaline is in my experience. Norepinephrine in this case is pretty much the same thing as epinephrine. We don't really need to distinguish between the two of them. So if you feel a little bit annoyed, kind of an adrenaline rush, a bit stressed or something, then you can confidently say you're in the right mental state to be improving. Now, I've seen a ton of posts online and in Discord saying, how do I not get angry in deathmatch, or how do I not get stressed when aim training? And I've also seen people giving advice on how to avoid these things. If you're playing something to improve, you want to be stressed within reason. However, if you're getting to the point where you can't control your emotions, it's very bad, whatever bad is for you, or maybe you're even breaking things, then you need to get under control. If you're so stressed you can't train, then it's gone too far. Or maybe for whatever reason you want to feel less stressed because you're trying to get a high score or clutch something and the stress is preventing you from doing that. Because I could make a whole video about managing these uncomfortable emotions, I'm going to, and it will come out next Saturday at 9 a.m., just like every week. Subscribe for that. But back on the topic of improvement, if you're stressed to a manageable degree, then just keep training. It'll help you improve faster. There's also evidence that adrenaline after your training session can help you. Just go take a cold shower, and this will cause an adrenaline rush push after your training. This is what I think makes the BARD pill so special. Resetting your runs annoys you, and what's more frustrating than having to restart a scenario that you were playing well just because of a simple mistake? It'll cause your brain to improve. Now, to get this benefit as efficiently as possible, I believe that you should push pace on your micro adjustments while keeping the goal of finishing in mind so that you remain annoyed by the constant resets and do not finish runs in order to keep a high error rate. I have no idea if Bardo's intended his routines to be played like this. I tried to reach out to him and he ignored me, but my research suggests this could make his practice really efficient. Now, remember back when I said neuroplasticity doesn't actually take place when aim training? Well, that's because it happens during periods of rest, kind of like a muscle. So when you sleep, this is when your most important progress happens. So 8 hours of sleep the day after your training is extremely important. Now that we got the basics down, I want to dive more into how you should feel when you're training and some strategies you can use to improve. So first of all, we have to distinguish between alertness and focus. Alertness is when your brain is very prone to focusing on things by having like a lot of acetylcholine and epinephrine. But focus in this context is your actual awareness of your training and whatever aspect of that training you are focusing on. So you'd think these would be directly related. More alertness makes you more focused, but this isn't always the case. When you're very alert, having high levels of norepinephrine, epinephrine, acetylcholine, you will respond to just about any stimuli and therefore react to anything. This can be bad for training as a lot of things could really easily distract you. Now, there's a bunch of individual factors. What might distract you one day might not distract you another day, and what might distract one person might not distract another person, and what might have distracted you at the beginning of your session won't distract you at the end of your session. It could be a bunch of things. Let's take music for example, since I get the question, can I aim train while listening to music a lot? If you're extremely alert, music, especially louder music, will kind of distract you and make it very hard to focus on anything. Or maybe your roommate has a friend over, but you're pretty cool, so you're aim training instead of socializing. Being really alert would make their background noise really distracting. On the other hand, if you're not really alert at all, unable to focus on anything, feeling like you're too calm and too relaxed to train, loud music can help you a lot to get into the zone for training and kind of raise your alertness levels. A conversation in the background might also help you. If being too calm is an issue for you, next time your roommate has a friend over, ignore them both and immediately start playing KovaaKs. Or you could just listen to loud music while you're training to kind of help yourself get more alert. If you feel you're somewhere in between these two descriptions, then you can try them both. If music hurts, it hurts. If it helps, it helps. Same with any noise. And it may be that at one point during your session or one day music helps a ton, and then later it hurts. Maybe it will always have the same effect on you. I don't know. You kind of got to figure this out for yourself. Now, the next thing you got to understand is the Ultradian Cycle. It's the idea that a 90-minute learning bout is the optimal length. You'll struggle in the first bit, then after 15 or 20 minutes, you'll become very focused for like the next 40 minutes or so, and then in the last 30 minutes, that focus will kind of start to die off. I feel these make a pretty good reference point, but also it's possible that it might not work for you. You can try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Also, if you have a life, it might be kind of hard to just sit down and play KovaaKs for 90 minutes frequently. For me personally, I will do Saturdays and Tuesdays a 90-minute session and stay very focused during that session. And then most other days during the week, I might hop on KovaaKs for like 10, 20 minutes, try and hit a couple high scores, no real pressure, and just play the game for a bit, or maybe I won't get on that day. If you have a ton of time in a day, I'd recommend doing more 90-minute sessions instead of doing a 3-hour session. So like do a 90-minute session, take a couple hours off, and then come back and do another 90-minute session. Now, most people can handle 1 to 3 of these sessions every day, but if your day at work's really stressful, then you might not even be able to handle one of these. On top of listening to loud music, in order to become alert, you can restrict your field of view. This could be only looking at the monitor you aim train on, or just staring at a single point on your wall or on your monitor for a bit before you train. You can lower your alertness level by just expanding your field of view, or increase your focus by avoiding your phone and other apps on your PC that could distract you while training, and only looking at your training. Fasting can increase alertness, likely because you need to be more alert to hunt for food, but again, being too alert can actually make it very hard to train, and hunger's no different. Being very hungry can make it hard to train. But as long as your hunger isn't distracting you, an aim training session before your next meal could have some benefits. If you have medical issues or plan to make drastic changes to your eating habits, or really any change to your eating habits, I'm not responsible for your health. You are. Please talk to a licensed doctor and don't delay meals that you need to survive. Now, if you take one thing away from this video, it should be that your brain, when properly aim training, should be alert, and that alertness should be focused onto your aim and in particular your mistakes. Depending on how good you are, it can be your mistakes as a whole or just one kind of mistake specifically, like micro adjustments. You should be less stressed, but you should acknowledge that your mistakes are good and going to help you improve. As for rest, what brain scans have shown is that taking some kind of rest, whether it be a 20-minute meditation or a 20-minute nap, within an hour after your aim training session will cause the neurons to fire in a backwards order from what they were doing when you were actually doing the task, which for whatever reason increases neuroplasticity rates. Scientists still can't explain this, and I definitely can. I'm going to keep looking into this kind of stuff, learning and trying to apply the principles for future aim routines and base my aim routines around these principles. Next week, I'm going to go over the concept of stress in a clutch situation or too much stress when aim training and how to avoid it. Please check back in for that and subscribe. Now, I know if I don't mention my sources, I'm going to get a lot of hate for it, so I would like to refer anyone who'd want to learn more to my source, the Hubermann Lab Podcast. This podcast is very information dense and long. If you want to understand everything in this video, I mainly pulled from episodes 1, 6, 7, and 20. I'd also like to point out that our understanding of our brains is not complete and it's constantly evolving. This means that there are some ideas that come from studies that haven't had massive sample sizes yet or are very far from being seen as basic scientific principles that are universally accepted. A lot of the information and mechanisms in this video could be disproven or shown as not that effective in the next 10 or 15 years, but this is what our cutting edge understanding has led us to believe. Andrew Hubermann, the guy who runs the podcast I listen to, is a professor of neurobiology at Stanford University. So I feel that a lot of the information in this video is what has the best chance of being true based on what our current science is suggesting. I'd also like to thank Rid for helping me understand some of the stuff I'm talking about and some of the stuff I found on these podcasts. You can check him out over at his YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.